Good afternoon, good morning everyone, wherever you are in the world. If you're in the US, good morning and welcome to Festival of Fridays. If you are in Europe or the UK, good afternoon. And if you happen to be in Asia, which a few of you might well be, very early morning to you or very late at night. Thank you very much for signing in. You are in the right place. This is Festival Fridays. You are about to have a masterclass. You are about to be inspired. You are about to learn things. So please put aside the next 45 minutes so you can do that. I promise it's only 45 minutes, which is the wonder of our Festival Fridays program. You don't have to sit through a whole day, pretend to look at your screen when someone says, oh, I'm on at 2:30, but it's only 9:30. So this is purposely done so that you only have to give up a little bit of your time. It's wonderful to be back after our summer hiatus, after we finished at the end of July, start of August. We're now going to start a run of Festival Fridays over the next 4 weeks, in fact, which is very exciting, all with different topics, all with amazing speakers. But to bring us back to our session today, whoa, it's been a lot, and a lot has certainly happened over the last months. Everything's been spun around, turned into different directions. People have had to change their strategies, whether it be personal strategies, professional strategies. People are completely ripping up the rule book, as it was, and learning as they go along. But I think there are some wonderful things that have come out of this challenge. And like always, these challenges prevent and create lots of opportunities, which are brilliant. And for those who are creative enough and innovative enough to see the opportunities, it's certainly a great time amongst all of the stress and the challenges. So to help us on our way today, we thought we'd put together a really great session, which involves looking at a brand, getting under the skin of a brand, a running brand, which obviously is one of those brands which has had a great time in the pandemic because more and more people are going to exercise. People could only do exercise at one point. I like to play a lot of sports, but even I found myself running for at least 4 months. So it's something that's really close to everybody's heart. And I think something that people will pick up on. You know, everyday life has been completely changed for everyone on the planet, and businesses have had to adapt at a rapid pace. So we've got a brand today in Tracksmith that have adapted that, have brought together these disconnected communities. And it's about how do they bring people together? How can you do that with the right marketing strategy? How can you do that in times of need? And to extrapolate all of the key advice, all of the key insights, and all of the key inspiration that you guys can take away is Havas Media Boston. And we've got with us Bree Rossetti, who is the Chief Strategy Officer. Say hello, Bree.
Hi.
And to help take us there, she will be doing an absolutely sterling job of interviewing Ryan Eckel, who is the brand president for Tracksmith. So without further ado, I will disappear in a moment. You have the opportunity to ask questions, to interact on the chat function or the Q&A function. If you're very lucky, Bree might take a couple of your questions and do it during the session. If you're unlucky, you get me asking the questions to Bree and Ryan at the end of the session. But please enjoy, take lots of notes, and sit back and listen to a great conversation. I will hand over to Bree and to Ryan. Let's give them a virtual round of applause. Yeah, off you go, guys.
Awesome, thank you. So, hi, Ryan. It's been a year. So I love Tracksmith as a brand. I'm not sure if everyone's as familiar. So tell us a little bit about Tracksmith. Tell us about your trajectory before March of this year, before everything started.
Yeah. So we were founded about 6 years ago in 2014. And the founding insight was that the running apparel market was really, it was really dull. It hadn't changed, it hadn't evolved, it hadn't innovated, and everybody looked like a Power Ranger. There's a lot of neon, a lot of like techie fabrics, and Matt Taylor, the founder, had worked at Puma. We had actually worked together at Puma, and had spent time inside these big companies, and realizing that running doesn't get the full attention. Running is, a Nike, Adidas, Under Armour, Puma. It's one of many categories that they're focused on, and it's maybe not the business driver. So the founding insight was that if we actually focus on running, if we focus on those consumers, if we focus on their needs, think through materials, cut, aesthetics, we can come up with a different direction. And that's what so that's what the brand has done over the past several years, and we've been growing steadily since then, since 2014.
And you guys had a lot of momentum behind you prior to this year, and then March hits and there's a global pandemic and we're all locked down and trapped at home. Talk to me about what happens kind of in the running world. How do runners adapt? Like what happens in that community?
Yeah, we had a big year plan. It was an Olympic year, and in our industry, the Olympics are one of every 4 years you get people beyond your kind of your core audience that pay attention to your sport, and so that was a big moment for us. We had planned to have a presence at all of the 6 major marathons around the world, marathon majors. So Berlin, Tokyo, New York, Chicago, Boston, and obviously when COVID hit, that was disrupted. We were going to be in Tokyo in the end of February 29th. It was the Tokyo Marathon, and a week before that, the Tokyo Marathon was canceled, and that was the first sign that this was going to be a really different year. And so, so we had to, like everybody, we had to just kind of sit back and kind of assess what was happening. At first, we had no idea what that was going to do to our business, and so we actually went through and we kind of emergency planned, all these scenarios where it's either we're down 10%, we're down 50%, or we're down 75%. In all those scenarios, we planned that we were down, though. We assumed that this was going to be a major catastrophe to our business. But then as we kept a close eye on sales and almost like watching it kind of hour by hour, we kind of saw that, okay, there's actually something different going on here. We were seeing our business really, really grow exponentially, and the rate of growth had increased over what we were seeing pre-pandemic. So that gave us confidence that, okay, we can continue to invest. We can continue to we still have an engaged audience. And then as we kind of, this is early days. This is probably week 1, week 2 of lockdown in March. And then we said, okay, well, this is a sport that our audience, our consumers, they love it. They're passionate about it. They're still able to do it. Yet our circumstances have obviously changed pretty significantly. We either, for those of us who are in Europe, maybe you can only run a kilometer around your flat. You can't go beyond that. Some people couldn't run at all, couldn't go outside their apartment. And then in the States, we were able to do it with some distancing. So we started to come up with plans just to re-engage our community. So we everything from content creation. We have a content creation arm. We had one going into this. We have published a magazine. We publish a lot of content on our site. We put that into high gear, and we said what people need, they're sitting at home, they want inspiration, they want escape, they want storytelling. So we really increased our content production. We started things like Zooms with our community, where you could come and talk to people. We have people on our team who are Olympic medalists who we brought into Zoom chats to just keep everybody engaged, keep everybody motivated. So we kind of doubled down in our community, and we think that's helped keep them engaged with us, and then hopefully more importantly, them engaged with the sport of running.
It's interesting because you think of running as sort of like a solo effort. It's an individual kind of out there, but it really is such a community, and so much of it is driven by people getting together and races, marathons, things like that. And a lot of marathons now have gone virtual and other things. And you guys recently launched a virtual sort of the alumni championships. Talk a little bit about that. I think it's really interesting as a virtual way of connecting with people, but also just in terms of the different types of running communities that you're tapping into and what's going on there.
Yeah. I mean, the running community is really, it's a tribe. It's become even more so, I would say, globally over the past several years, as we're seeing a trend with people traveling around the world to run marathons, to run other races. And so it's truly a global community. There, people follow each other on Instagram, and they're consuming the same type of media. So that, trying to keep that globalness of that community intact was something that we thought a lot about. Virtual races started, and as a way for people to compete, right? And a virtual race, for people who don't know, is essentially you go run a distance with a GPS device, and then you submit that GPS result to whoever is organizing the race, and then they rank everybody, and you have results. The marathons were going virtual, and more or less every other major race, at least here in the States, we had a virtual component to it. And so we put together training programs for people to train for those virtual races, and then we saw an opportunity to do one ourselves. In the States, a lot of university track and field programs were being cut they had budget cuts. Universities were struggling because of COVID and other things, and for reasons that we didn't quite agree with, track and field was getting cut. And track and field is one of the most diverse sports in terms of the racial mix, in terms of socioeconomic mix, and body type inclusiveness. So in order to try to save some programs, we put on a virtual cross-country championship. This fall, there's no college cross-country season. That was canceled, and we thought it would be fun if everybody could race virtually for their alumni, for the university that they went to, that they attended to represent that school. And we'll recreate a university cross-country championships. So that's what we did. That's actually happening now and Sunday. I've got to go run my 2 miles on Sunday. I've been training for it, and I'm not expecting big things, but it'll be fun. It's a fun way. It's fun. I think, it's been an opportunity to just, like anything, whenever the situation changes, it forces people to innovate. And I think we've been able to help keep some fun in running and keep some joy in it, particularly in a time when the things that people typically train for, or motivated by, or give them joy have been taken away. So.
Yeah, I love that. And I love what's behind that like it is such an inclusive community, the running community, and the things that are happening actually in some ways, extends that out, because you don't physically have to be at a race, or, even in the same country. But another thing that's happened this year, in addition to the pandemic, is the massive and really necessary focus on racial injustice. And one thing that we've talked about before is running is assumed to be inclusive, because all you really need is sort of a pair of shoes. And as you say, when it comes to body image, when it comes to the ability to kind of just get started, there aren't those barriers. But we've learned, and it's been made really clear that not everyone feels safe while they're running. And how's the last 6 months really made the community sort of look inward and think about real change? And how have you guys?
I would, when Ahmaud Arbery was killed while running, that was very eye-opening to the entire community. And I think, you're right, runners, the industry, the people who are involved in it, at least many of us for a long time have sort of said, that's great, it's the most inclusive sport, it's all you need are a pair of shoes. And I think what the Ahmaud Arbery murder opened a lot of people's eyes to is that, well, that's not true. You need safe places to run. You need you needs to be inviting to people. It needs to be inviting to everybody. And I think the sport took a really hard look at itself and said, okay, we could do better. We could do a lot better than this. And so, everything we've evaluated everything from, a big part of, in a normal time, what we do are we lead group runs from our store in Boston. And these are a big part of our community building efforts. And we sort of took a look at those, taking this moment of not having those to kind of reevaluate it. And we said, okay, are we doing a good job from who's leading those runs? Do we have a representation of leadership in those runs? I said we produce a lot of content. Are we making sure that we're representing the right voices? And are there things that we could do to make sure that that there are more places to run that feel safe for everybody who wants to participate in the sport? And so so I think it's been it's tragic that it took what it took this year for the sport to examine itself this way. But I think the progress and the introspectiveness has been very, very healthy for I think the future of the sport. And Yeah, it's been, I mean, it's been a lot. The running industry is, and the running people who run, not just the industry, I mean, just individuals who run have been through so much this year. I feel like so much of what happened in 2020 has been very, very relevant and sharply felt by those of us in the community.
Yeah, yeah, and I think what's interesting too is that it's not just the physical component of running, right? It's the mental component and the community and all of the things that surround it. And I think it's interesting as I've learned more about runners and that tribe that you talk about and about Tracksmith. You guys think about sort of creativity and running and that intersection and sort of running as an outlet. Can you talk more about that and even the fellowships that you guys have launched recently?
Yeah. Yeah, I mean, it's I think for so many people, running is this, it's escape. I think the interesting thing about the sport is that it's to everybody who is a committed runner who runs as an important part of their life. They have a deeply personal relationship with that activity. When you talk to individuals, the reasons are all very different. It's even something as simple as, do you run to go just think about the problems that you have to solve during the day, as a way that you can you can come into some, I don't know, a place of serenity to think about work, for example, or groups of people do that, or people who, like me, I use it to not think about anything. But it's a mental cleanser for a lot of people. And I think in so many ways we've started kind of saying internally this idea that running is a gift. I mean, this year more than any other year, it's gotten us through so much. And you mentioned the fellowship. Yeah, we've always believed that that storytelling in the sport is essential to keep any sport thriving. And in running, the storytelling has been, it's been fine. There's some good storytellers out there, but we've also seen an opportunity to diversify the voices, to diversify the types of stories that are told and who they're told about. And this was a program that we actually had teed up last year, and I think the timing of launching it this year worked really well. But what we did is we put out a call to submission for ideas, creative ideas from underrepresented voices. And underrepresented, I don't necessarily mean only racially underrepresented from a gender perspective, but just the media landscape is hard. It's hard to cut through, right? It's hard to kind of have your voice heard, even in a social media environment where everybody has a platform. It's hard to really get your voice amplified. So we put out a call for submissions, and we received. I mean, it's amazing the projects that we received, and we're gonna green light 5 to 6 of them, and those people receive grants to basically. Essentially, it's a grant to go pursue their creative project, and everything from podcasts to music to films to screenplays to art to poetry. These are all things that were submitted that we're all kind of excited. It's amazing. I think our takeaway was it's amazing how much creativity exists out there from people who you just you don't think about. And so it's it was sort of just a reminder in this very challenging year that there's just so much the power of creativity can do so much for people. So we're excited. We're gonna be announcing the winners very, very shortly, and excited to get that out there.
I love that like network of your consumers and your community that you guys are creating. And one thing that I think is unique about you, or is certainly something that I imagine sort of others admire. You talk about sort of your the insight that you were conceived upon, that you wanted to prioritize running, and you didn't necessarily want to be a big part of one in many different efforts that a big company might pursue. But you guys also obviously have a direct relationship with your consumer. And I think one of the things that we've heard about this year, especially in retail, is this big switch and an acceleration of sort of D2C businesses. But that's kind of how you guys were conceived. So how have you sort of taken that advantage that you have that direct relationship with consumers? And are there things that you've had to pivot or accelerate even more because of the situation that we're all in?
Yeah, I think our audience, our consumers we're lucky that they're incredibly engaged, and they're passionate about the sport. Many of them are passionate about us, which we're very fortunate and thankful for. And I think in a year like this, being able to have a direct relationship has been just, I mean, so helpful. For example, when the first couple weeks, maybe a month or so into it, our CEO, Matt, who I mentioned earlier, we set handwritten notes to many of our customers, just checking in, just saying, hey, here's what's happening with us. Here's what's happening. I mean, he even talked about what's happening with his family and his own situation. He made it very personal. Just hope that you guys are all doing well, and we're here if you need us. Not that in a time like this, consumers need a brand to help them get through times, but for something a sport that's personal like running, I mean, people did reach out, and people did, I think, appreciate the ability just to be able to interact with the company directly in a very intimate way like that. And I mentioned the Zoom calls that we've had with members of our community too, where they're hosted by a guy named Nick Willis, who's an employee of ours, but also a two-time Olympic medalist recently in the 1500 meters. He would bring in guests every week to talk about whatever topic we thought was interesting. So one week we had a guy named Charlie Engel, who's a well known for using running to battle his addiction. And then something as deep as that and as personal as that, and then to something as maybe just sort of fun and interesting, which is like the shoe controversy going on in the running world now with technology and carbon plates, so we've been able to bring our community into these just really intimate conversations that we've been having, and without a direct relationship with our consumers. I mean, it'd be very hard for us to organize that, to do it in a way that felt really authentic. That was really authentic.
That's awesome. I love those. And you talk about some of the people that you work with, some elite runners. How do you foster those relationships, or even like broker them? How do you decide, who you want to partner with and who should represent your brand, and how do you work that sort of two-way street?
Yeah, so we think about it, I think, really, really differently than probably some other brands. We don't sponsor athletes. We've actually, one of the founding principles of the brand was that work for the amateur, and we've defined the amateur. The definition of amateur is someone who loves something, so it's for the love. It doesn't have anything to do with necessarily whether you're paid or not, but because that founding principle was so kind of deep and core to who we are, we've really tried to stay away from transactional relationships where we just go find an athlete and pay them to wear our product. Those never really come across as authentic. And but we found we've forged these partnerships that are far deeper. So I mentioned Nick, who again, he's from New Zealand. He lives in States now. He went to University of Michigan. He's been to the Olympics 3 times. He won medals in 2 of the last 3 Olympics. Mary Kane is another runner who's well known in the States. He was a world junior champion. They're both employees of ours, and we have some others like that as well. And they work for us. They're full-time employees, and it's a model where most of what an athlete needs is they need a steady income. They need the flexibility to go train when they want to train. They need benefits, healthcare benefits. And for a lot of them, not everybody, for a lot of them, they need the pressure of not having to hit some of the time standards that other brands require for you to achieve get your bonuses and get paid. So we've said, okay, well, what we want to do is we want to support runners, and particularly amateur runners, the way that they need it. And so, yeah, we when we have opportunities to hire somebody, like Nick or Mary into the team, it's amazing because of what it brings internally to our company, to every meetings that we're in every day, and also outwardly to our consumers and yeah. So it's a different type of relationship. We've also, leading up to that, we had a program called, going into the U.S. Olympic trials in the marathon, called the Amateur Support Program, where if you didn't have a contract with an athlete, with another company, and you qualified for the Olympic trials, we would provide gear and a few other things. And because of that program, we had more runners at the Olympic trials than any other brand. So I think it shows that there's so many, the Nikes of the world will sponsor the top 0.5% maybe, and everybody else in the sport really doesn't get very much. And so it's an opportunity for us to try to really support those athletes who are trying to just take the sport as far as they can.
That's awesome. I love that. It's been a kind of humbling year in many ways. And I'm not personally a great runner or a good one, but I've been out there, I've hit the pavement. Some might call it walking a little more. But Matt Taylor, you mentioned your co-founder, he talks about that too. And he talks about like the consistency and the good days and the bad days and just sort of the resiliency of the running community. Are there lessons that you think that you personally kind of take forward as we go into this year, especially as we go into what maybe is, some winter months that might bring more lockdowns, or maybe already have for some folks in Europe?
Yeah, I think it's easy to kind of default to a lot of cliches about how, running is like life. I mean, runners love to talk about this stuff. It's the resiliency, you have good days and bad days, but you kind of grind it out either way. I think if there's anything that we've probably taken away from this year, it's just how deeply important this sport is to so many people, and how it has been a sort of it's been therapeutic and it's been part of, whether it's sort of mentally therapeutic or even physically, when you don't have a lot of opportunity to get out and exercise, maybe particularly in some areas that were locked down more strictly. When you do get to go out and run, it's one of the few things you can do to keep healthy the way that you want to. So, and I think we've been also, so there's the whole kind of side of, okay, everything, so many things that make this sport on the surface really fun, whether it's a community, whether it's racing, whether it's being able to run in these places where I want to run, that was stripped away for so many people, yet they still kept at it in increasing numbers, right? And on the competitive side, which it's as a part of our audience for sure, we're seeing people run these virtual races and set personal bests all over the place, which is, nobody kind of thought, the conventional thinking is, if you're gonna run at your best, you need a crowd of people to run with. You need people pushing you and pacing you and all of that. But we've seen in many cases, people just getting on a track, running by themselves and running like lifetime bests, which is, it's I don't know if there's any deep insight in that other than just sort of, being able to kind of defeat your circumstances and still accomplish the goals that you want to achieve. It's just, it's inspiring in sort of some small ways. So, it's again, I keep going back to this idea that we've kind of been kind of recognized at this site that running's a gift, and we just have, I think, so many people who in our community who work for us and out there just have this, I think, just a deeper appreciation for something that they may have taken for granted previously.
Yeah, I love that about you guys, that sort of true motivation that you have, and that true appreciation for the sport and those that participate in the sport regardless, which is just, it's really positive, and it's really needed right now. There's a couple of questions from the Q&A that I've got here, so I'm going to read them out. As a former run coach and someone who's very up on trends in fitness, this is the first I'm hearing of Tracksmith, and naturally I checked out your site and I love your stuff. How do you compete in a very crowded marketplace where so many brands have their hooks in people already? So how do you think about sort of really differentiating?
Yeah, I think a lot of what we do is it starts with the product. It starts with being very, very just human-centered design in a way. It's, we focus on raw materials. Because we're direct to consumer, we don't have to deal with some of the margin challenges and pressures that other brands have to deal with when they go through wholesale. So we can we can invest in the product, and it works. I think a lot of DTC companies, they sort of took the widget, whatever it was, whether it was a mattress or a razor, and they made it kind of equivalent to what was out in the market, but cheaper, and then package it up in a really slick way and present it back to consumers as, hey, here's like a cheaper widget. We did something a little bit different, where we took the product, we actually invested more in it, we made it better, and still at a better value to consumers. Our prices might be a bit premium to some of our competitors, but the product is much, much better. So we started with that. And then, not just materials and quality, but just attention to detail. Everybody who works in our company is a passionate runner, and we think about this stuff all day long. And so that comes through in product design as well. But then I think it's how we just present it. We're big fans of storytelling. We're big fans of some of the things that we love about the sport, some of the places that we love to run. And we go and we tell the stories of people who run in those places and are passionate about the sport. And it comes across as just a different type of I would say photography and film. I mean, when we shoot stuff, we do it almost like photo documentary style. So if we're going to go do a photo shoot, we have somebody go and do a 10-mile tempo run, do a 10-mile hard run. We shoot the whole thing. We start, from beginning to end. And so the moments that we capture are authentic, as opposed to other brands where they'll have a runner go get all sweaty, go run over there, get really sweaty, come back, and we're going to have you pass the same spot 5 times, and hopefully that we get the light just the right way.
I'm down with the water bottle.
Yeah, right. We don't do it that way. And so and I think that comes across. It's almost like, runners recognize that sort of genuineness of the imagery, and it almost feels like it's like a secret handshake, but between runners that we think that they understand. So those are some of the things that we do.
Yeah, I love too that you guys, all of your collections, they all have a true story behind them. You're not manufacturing it for marketing purposes. You already have that story kind of built in, spoiled for choice a little. So another question that just came in is Tracksmith feels it's obviously a Boston-based company. What plans do you have for more outreach or events nationally? You obviously talked about sort of the alumni championships, but how are you thinking? You were planning to be at Tokyo, you mentioned. How are you thinking globally, nationally?
Yeah, so we do sell internationally. We have a long way to go to make that a better shopping process for people. I mean, you charge duties and everything ships from the States right now. We think that we have the opportunity to expand that. We had planned to have a presence in Berlin. We've been in London before at the London Marathon and Tokyo. So we will, I think once travel gets a little bit easier, we continue to expand globally. Nationally, we're certainly, we started in Boston. I think our biggest markets are in the Northeast, but I mean, we continue to expand throughout the country as well. Yeah.
And this is actually a good environment to accelerate it, right? Because it doesn't really matter where you are.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah. Even our team is pretty distributed. We got our creative directors in Portugal, our head of content's in London, Nick is in Michigan. So yeah, we're based in Boston, but I would say we feel quite global at this point.
One of the other questions was, what's the greatest lesson you've learned as a brand during COVID-19?
Oof.
I only have one, but
I think I mean it's I guess it's probably obvious, but the ability to be nimble, to be really quick, it's nice. I joined from Dick's Sporting Goods, and I had been there for several years, about 8 years, and prior to that I was at Puma for 10 years. And so I worked in large companies up until Tracksmith, and I think the thing that I really appreciated being here was how quickly we could just shift gears. And we, within a week or two of kind of seeing what was going to happen this year, we had basically pivoted our entire strategy around content, around kind of digital community engagement, and had that in the market within a week, right? So it's not like a large company where it takes maybe a couple months to kind of reset everything. We're able to be very, very fast. that was sort of one lesson. I think, you know, a lot of it was just sort of internal about how do we keep team culture going? How do we keep our employees engaged? How do we communicate? And so, you know, things like team happy hours that we would do every day in the beginning, every day at 4:30 we do a happy hour.
I remember that in March there was a lot of happy hour overload, and then everybody was like,
and then the pendulum swung the other way. It was like, okay, I don't need this every day. But, I think a lot of it was just how to kind of how to operate in a pure virtual environment, and those are probably the main things. I think, you know, and then I think in just being really empathetic. It's not a lesson, right? Any marketer is going to be very empathetic, but I think we made sure that was top of mind throughout everything that everybody was going through this year, and understanding perspectives. And you know, some people that were when lockdown hit, they're fine. I'm just going to go like learn how to make sourdough and take on new hobbies. I mean, but then some people were dealing with tragedy, and both on the racial justice side as well as obviously on the health side. So I think just remembering to be extremely empathetic and take into consideration the viewpoints of your consumer, and it may not be your own, I think was something that we really focused on.
Yeah. Well, the final question that I'm going to sort of paraphrase in here is a question about our relationship between Havas and Tracksmith, and sort of how we've connected. And obviously we started working together a little bit during this crazy time. And the question here is actually about how Havas has different people working on the Tracksmith business. So we definitely have runners of all different backgrounds, you know, marathon runners and people like myself who are really proud to make it through 2 miles, but stay out there. But one of the things that we do talk about at Havas, that I know we've talked a lot about with you, is this idea of sort of meaningful media and understanding different communities and different tribes. So I'm going to end this sort of Q&A by asking you, what do you consider right now your meaningful media? What's the thing that you're turning to, a podcast or an app or something that's sort of getting you through here in November?
On a personal level?
Yeah, on a personal level. On a personal level.
I mean, like today, today that's an interesting day to ask that question. I'm I'd probably be refreshing 538 and the New York Times. And I think, look, there's so much, I think where you get your information is so important these days. And the idea of trusted media, I think, is now going to be like the meaningful media, at least for people who are really engaged in everything that's going on in the world. You know, for both personally and as a brand, my trusted sources are New York Times and 538, and I can't help but do my Twitter scrolling, particularly in the States right now, and I'm in Pennsylvania, which is sort of the epicenter of all of the election drama at the moment. But yeah, I mean, I think, and escape to me is still Instagram, where I can just look at pretty pictures and calm down, and so yeah, that's my meaningful media. Things like magazines like Monocle, which help give a global perspective. I think in the States too, sometimes it's hard to you get inundated with US centric media all day, and it's hard to get a global perspective. I try to between listening to BBC World and reading Monocle, and then sort of interesting, I don't know, just like thought experiment leadership with guys like Malcolm Gladwell and his Revisionist History podcast are some favorites of mine too.
That's a good one. Awesome. Well, thanks, Ryan. This has been really fun. And Jeremy, I'm sure that you're going to pop back in. I hopefully captured most of the questions in the Q&A, but let us know if there are others.
No, absolutely. What a great conversation. Thank you very much, Ryan and Brie. Let's give them a round of applause first before we forget. I know it's virtual, but if you're sitting at home, thumbs up, round of applause. You can put that in the chat. There's a little thumb section. No, great questions as well from the audience. I actually had a question, Ryan, on the back of, and for you as well, Brie, actually. Running has become one of those sports now, which is like music has become really kind of ingrained into people. It's a real personal thing now, whether you're, you know, like Bree doing 2 miles, like me attempting to do 5K, or a marathon runner. Going forward now, you've got all of these people that you've brought together and this whole, if you like, new client base almost, right? And fans. How do you, going forward, in terms of what you market and how you market, obviously it'd be great to know some of the tips in terms of how do you market to these people without feeling like you're encroaching on their personal space going forwards, because you'll have this whole tip, and running's become so personal to them, right? It's a fine line.
Yeah. I mean, I think we're thinking about a couple of things. We're thinking about, you know, just how do we amplify the brand that exists today to reach those new people. We do think that it's a once people see it, people who are emotionally connected to the sport, they tend to like what they see from us, which again we're fortunate for. But you know, I think we're going to be entering some pretty tough months to run, and particularly here in the northeast of the States, it's like it's not pleasant. It's, you know, it's below freezing and cold and snowy, and so we're gonna try to come up with ways to keep those people motivated and engaged through the kind of the tough part of the sport, right? And I think that's what we talk a lot about, is how do we, you know, if you're new to the sport and you came in because, I don't know, your CrossFit gym was closed, or your soccer league no longer is functioning, and you're doing running, how do we just keep you to kind of stick with it through, you know, to December, January, February, March. And that's, you know, everything from tips, and we just like little kind of hacks, I guess you call them, to, hey, like, here's what, you know, for an apparel company it's sort of obvious, but here's what to wear. And a lot of it, you know, in New England, you say there's no such thing as bad weather, only bad clothes. And so I think bringing some of that kind of, I don't know, philosophy or spirit to our conversations with people is something that we'll do. And then, you know, we've also focused a lot on, because there isn't a lot of competition happening, just to do different things to keep yourself interested in the sport. So run without a watch, right? Run with, go in the summer, we told people just go find the highest point in your town and go run to it and take it out in the view and relax, and go run to a swimming hole and jump in and run back. We'll try to come up with the winter versions of that, and hopefully keep people engaged. You know, I think that's the thing. Like when we as runners, we kind of know what it's like to have to slog through a winter, and I think we're in hopefully a decent position to offer some advice on that.
The thing I would just add to that I love about Tracksmith is the reason I run is you have an emotional connection to it. And Ryan said that, you know, if something's personal, it's because it's emotional. And I think that like the role that a brand like Tracksmith can play is that you can feel connected to it. You can feel that authenticity, and that can really come through. So I think that is the thing that brands need to keep really top of mind, especially in this time where people feel and are isolated.
Yeah, absolutely. And I think the whole crux of what you guys have talked about today, in terms of bringing together that disconnected community to become connected in times like this, is really crucial. And the key brands are the ones that are being innovative, are being creative, and not afraid to try new things. That's the key, right?
Totally.
Yeah, exactly.
Well, thank you so much, Bree and Ryan. It's been an absolute pleasure having you on Festival and Fridays. I hope you have enjoyed it. I know that our audience definitely has. And I'm just going to read this last comment that's come in, because they've asked a question as well. So we like this person. We like an interactive audience. They say the best marathon runners are built in the best Boston marathon runners are built in the winter, with a smiley face. What a lovely way to end this. Thank you so much, everyone who's tuned in. I told you it'd be 45 minutes. We are literally on the button with 45 minutes, just so that you know. Oh, and well, now we've got the crowd going as it comes to an end. Someone said, thank you. This was so great. So we're happy you've learned. Please tell all your colleagues. We've got more Festival Fridays coming. This was our start. So thank you once again to Bree and Ryan. Fantastic. Thank you very much, guys.
Thanks, Jeremy. Thanks, Bree.
Thank you. Enjoy. Have a good weekend, everybody.
You too. Bye, guys.